I want to make my kids not, struggle and not, go through what I went through, but I also want to be able to go do epic shit with really cool people. The world's big. There's a lot to go do. I want to be able to go access it. We were always asked, how do I know this is going to work? How do I know you're worth your salt? The biggest thing is if you're trying to do good for people, you're good. If you're trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes, that's not cool. I mean, we had that whole idea, right? If you want to make $1 million, serve $1 million. It's like, how do you serve people? How do you help? I just think that if that is a fundamental thought process, mindset, everything else is easy to deal with.
Welcome to the Deep Specialization Podcast, the show where we blend focus, strategy, and client intimacy in order to scale and simplify our businesses and our lives. I'm your host, Corey Quinn. Let's jump into the show. Today, I'm joined by the President of Intrigue Media, Rob Murray. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Corey. President, it sounds so authoritarian.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I am super excited to see you again. We spent a little bit of time not too long ago here in the shores of Santa Monica, and it's great to see you. For the listening audience, would you mind just introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and Intrigue Media.
Yeah, for sure. So Rob Murray, one of the co-founders of Intrigue Media, which is the agency we run. We specialize in helping landscape entrepreneurs, usually between 3 and 6 million, that want to get to 10 plus, digital marketing and qualified lead gen. Family, got 3 kiddos, 9, 7, 7, wife, golden retriever dog, live out on a lake, love water skiing in the summer and snowboarding in the winter, or surfing if I can get away. That's me in a nutshell. What
can you share about the size of your agency, number of employees, clients, revenue, anything you're comfortable sharing?
We're about 30 full time. We're doing about 5 million. We have about 110 clients ish, somewhere around there. Maybe like 108 right now. 60% of them are landscape, or half of them are probably landscape.
And what is the other half about?
We have a couple of other pockets. Law and insurance are kind of the other group. And then and home improvement construction is like the main large group. And then there's a couple of like outside the core that are there just because of where we started from a local organization.
Sure, we'll dig into that a little bit. Before we do, what is your role there? What's your day-to-day as the president? What are you up to these days?
I mean, my main thing is to make sure we have the right team. Like, that's my priority one. And that they're getting, coached and mentored and trained so that they can go be leaders and we can scale the thing with good people. But outside of that, I'm responsible for revenue.
That's awesome. And being one of the co-founders, you were there on day one. Could you share with us sort of the origin story? Like, what was happening in your life just before you started Intrigue that made starting this agency the next best thing to do with your time?
Oh, it was just a banana story. Like, so Paul, co-founder, he wanted to start this company up in Oshawa in the summer between semesters at university, where he'd put up like a TV in between mirrors at a hair salon and then sell the ads on the mirrors while they're like sitting there, captivated audience. So him and a buddy tried to get that going in Oshawa. They never really got it off the ground. He asked me if I wanted to do it in Guelph because he found some random person selling a TV that could wirelessly broadcast from like a hard drive to a monitor. For some reason, we thought that was the coolest thing since sliced bread. So I took $400 from my student loan. He put $400 from his money and we bought this TV. And then we essentially, like, one of our biggest things was like, ask for feedback. Like, if you want money, ask for feedback. If you want feedback, ask for money. So we walked around asking all these shops with this TV in our hand, being like, hey, if we put this up at the university center, would you pay us, $50 a month to have your video play on it? And we did that for 4 or 5 months. And the feedback was actually pretty positive. It was just going to be like a side project to help fund, partying, essentially pay for tuition while we were at school. And then I went to Austria on exchange at the beginning of 2007. And then Paul came and visited, traveling in Europe, and he visited on my birthday in June. And I showed him one of the issues we had was that we always had to outsource somebody who'd make the video. So we would take some pictures, whatever, send it to somebody, a month later, they'd make a video, send it back to us. Anyway, it was just a horrible experience. We couldn't get anything done quick. But I showed him a video that we had made of our skiing in the Alps. And he's like, what'd you use to make that video? And it was Windows Movie Maker. And he's like, dude, we can make our own videos. We can sell ads. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Turns out he installed this TV at the university center while I was in Austria. And we said, okay, well, in August in 2007, let's get back and let's go beat some pavement and see if we can get some people to sign up for this thing. So for 2-3 years, we just walked around downtown and asked people if they wanted to participate in this program, and slowly installed more TVs. And then in 2009, we sold a third of the business and to an investment firm, capitalized the business, brought that video advertising model to, 5-6 other communities inside of Ontario and franchised it. And then come 2012, we were getting pulled into online marketing. Our client base, we had hundreds of clients, and they were like, how do you get to the top of Google? Can you help us with our website? My nephew left, all the, stories. What's this Facebook thing all about? And so that client base pulled us into online marketing. And then the thing that really drove home everything was we were always asked, how do I know this is going to work? How do I know you're worth your salt? And with that video advertising approach, it was difficult because it's out of home advertising. It's just tough to measure. And we just saw the writing on the wall around like attrition and renewal. If we want to make renewal a thing that helped us drive growth, then we'd have to move into a space where we could demonstrate value. And that's online marketing became the thing. And so then we became more general, we were localized, and eventually we stopped the shenanigans, got vertical.
But I'm curious about the time when you're realizing that it was a difficult challenge to be able to prove the value of this out-of-home product that you were selling. People were asking for digital marketing. It was kind of an up and coming. And so what was the size of the business at that point? And was it still localized? And when did you expand from that localized perspective? Because now you're in Canada, but you're obviously in the United States as well. So how did you transition from localized to more of a broader focus?
So it's interesting. Vanessa, one of the owners here as well. So we have a team share ownership plan, or ESOP. She started with us 12 years ago. She owns part of the company, but today for our team huddle, she did a history of the company. So it's interesting you say that. So in 2012, we did $590,000 in revenue, and we were primarily video advertising, this out of home model. And then we slowly got pulled into this online marketing piece. Two things. One is I'm a pretty intuitive problem solver. So like when I meet with anybody, I don't care what business they're in, I can break down the revenue model very quickly and then understand where there's problems in it and then help them grow it. But I don't have the ability to be able to do that for everybody. I need to have a team that can do it for everybody. And so, but my problem used to be I would bring in these random accounts and be like, I know how to help them. And then I would try to like pass it off to this group who I didn't give enough time to or context about, and then hope they did a good job. And, we did decent, but it was always a bit of a shit show. And there was no standardization. There was no repeatability. But it was COVID that really made us go international and broaden our geographic scope because everybody got used to the video. And so like the advantage of the local marketer, on the streets in Idaho, were no longer advantage when it came to us because, we had a bit of a specialization. We understood how to market for landscapers. And so we kind of doubled down on it. Now, we did try HVAC first. It didn't work. And then we came off of it and then decided to go after landscapers.
So let me expand on that a little bit. So you were a generalist focused on the local area, working with all of your video, out of home clients initially, right? And you were selling them, okay, we're going to sell you SEO or PPC, digital marketing, whatever that looked like. And what was that transition from that to HVAC and then landscape? Like where did that transition come from, and what caused that?
It was in 2018. We started 2019. We had about maybe 113 or 115 clients at the time, tiny and big, whatever. And we said, okay, where are we making the most margin? Where clients are the happiest and our team knows how to do good work. And home improvement and construction was the clear winner. And mostly because of the deal size that we could bring somebody. So they were able to pay, whatever, $1,000 or $2,000 to buy a customer, and they make a lot of money. So then once we were there, we were like, so that's like pool companies, roofing, flooring, HVAC, landscape, interior, exterior renovation. And so we started, trying to focus in on those types of entrepreneurs. And then COVID hit. So we were doing pretty well. COVID hit. HVAC was necessity. And we saw it as recession proof. So we went after HVAC. The thing with HVAC that's difficult though, is that it's difficult to make someone a lot of money because a lot of their business model is based on service calls, and service calls turn into replacement calls. But not every service call is a replacement call. And we're trying to like guarantee 5-to-1 ROI on revenue or 3-to-1 gross margin ROI. Doing that with HVAC is difficult, very difficult. It's also super competitive. And there's a bunch of marketing companies that say they specialize in HVAC. So there's some noise there. So, after giving it a go, and we made people money, no question, but it was difficult to measure and monetize and incorporate into like service type and that kind of thing. We were growing a landscape roster a little bit. and their average deal is like 60 grand, 70 grand with a gross margin of like 40%. And we started to, and we were speaking at the conferences, starting to understand the customer a lot better. And then because it was COVID, we started to realize that we could start to initiate and close deals on Zoom without having to be belly to belly, which was an assumption we had. We had to be belly to belly to close a deal. Then we went to Louisville for the big landscape show in 2021. And we just kind of haven't looked back since then.
So is it fair to say that you, at least in the marketing piece, you were in the marketing business roughly from 2009 to 2019 before you started specializing in first home services and then HVAC and then ultimately landscape?
To be honest, we had no idea what strategy was. And I don't think very many people do. So we were just out involved in our community, mastering the craft of marketing, no strategic position in the marketplace whatsoever outside of we were everywhere. We'd host amazing parties with hundreds of people, mayors, fire department chiefs, police department chiefs, everybody. So we were well known and that helped us grow. But then we got introduced to vert harness and scaling up. And then we got introduced to vertical versus horizontal positioning. And then we started to ask ourselves, okay, well, if there's two ways to position, which way do you want to do it? Do you want to go horizontal, be a solution for any industry, or do you want to be vertical and be a solution for a industry? So that's when the strategic conversation started happening, was 2018, 19.
So you mentioned you were speaking. I know that that's a big part of your go-to-market today. When did that occur to you as a viable strategy? Like when did you start speaking and how did you start to land those early gigs?
Well, we were doing talks locally and we didn't realize that was actually helping, our brand in the local market for people looking at us as like an expert. But then we also heard of a couple of other companies that were doing talks and that it was working for them, after meeting other people that have been helping similar types of companies like home improvement construction. We have a model, we call it growth on purpose. It's a bit too much. So we had to simplify it. So what we did, we went to the associations with this idea of growth on purpose and landed a couple of talks. And then we would go to the audience and people were stoked. They were just like refreshed. It hit home for a lot of people. But it was still too much because it's a model around like how to grow a company based on core values and purpose to attract customers and team members. But it's too much. So we had to simplify it down to the 5 marketing mistakes, which is what we went out with last year. So we did 15, 20 talks last year. But it was only in 2021 that we started the idea.
So you decided to narrow down, you built out this strategy, you realized you wanted to focus on a vertical market versus a horizontal market. You began to talk at local shows, which led to larger shows, national shows, let's call it. What other things did you do in the early days to kind of build momentum within landscaping?
Well, I mean, so we host the I Am Landscape podcast, and we're actively involved in the association. So Landscape Ontario is pretty well renowned in North America. We're part of the National Association of Landscape Professionals. We joined and sponsored the California Landscape Contractor Association. We're supporting the New Brunswick and Halifax, or East Coast of Canada Landscape Association. Participate with the Michigan Association, North Carolina. So it's association involvement is probably the biggest thing that we've done. And then we go to the shows. I mean, we don't do what you guys did at Scorpion, but we have a bit of fun and, kind of try to stand out a little bit. But the main thing is, we've interviewed a bunch of coaches and a bunch of entrepreneurs to try to understand their business. We don't get too involved in operations. So we're all about, marketing and sales process. It turns out it's not overly complicated, but a lot of people don't formalize those things in their companies. It wasn't rocket science. It was just about putting ourselves where our customers were and getting involved. I think that was the big thing too. It's we weren't there to just take. We're there to try to help the associations be better and actively pursue leadership positions on committees and that type of thing. And it was a bit weird though, because people looked at us like you're the sponsor, what are you doing? You're just gonna come in here and just take. But once we got to know them and they got to know us, they realized that we're there to actually help. And then we also look at it like it's a 10-year thing. It's not a 1-year thing. So have you seen 40-Year-Old Virgin, right?
I have.
Remember that movie? Yeah. So you gotta plant seeds.
Plant that seed, man.
It takes a couple of years to harvest some ground, right?
Yeah. So surprisingly, you're speaking about it as if it is common sense. It's amazing how uncommon this approach is. This is very similar to the approach that I teach a lot of my clients, which is get involved as a giver, get involved with the associations, go and speak from the stages, and become a part of the industry. Don't just come in and see these folks as a bunch of contacts on a spreadsheet that you're gonna enter into a random conversion rate and X amount of revenue, and that's going to relate to my new Ferrari that I'm going to get one day. And so I think that it's subtle, and you guys get it, I think, intuitively. It comes natural to you, but I think it is something that is not as natural to others. So I think what you've done is really brilliant. What about like imposter syndrome? I get a lot of questions in the work I do around, well, hey, I really am interested in focusing my agency in on whatever market it is. In your case, it's landscape. But did you ever feel like an imposter, or that you didn't know enough about that industry to be able to be credible when you're selling into it? Did that ever occur to you guys?
Well, not really, just because we're so well studied on sales and marketing and leadership. I think maybe if we weren't masters of our craft, maybe we would have been. But I know I don't know things, so I know enough to hurt me, right? And I also understand the fundamental principles of strong sales and marketing. It's all grounded in leadership. The three of them are actually like very similar. Understand who it is that you're trying to serve, understand the problems that they have, help them address those problems, and be a solution to help them have a better life. That's leadership, sales, and marketing. Like, you can really line it up that way. Studying that for 10, 12 years, I don't know an industry we couldn't go into and help, just because we've seen it. So we've got so many reps on sales and marketing and leadership. And revenue models are fucking revenue models. They're all the same. Whether you get paid to do a design or you do a demo to start or a discovery call, there's some nuance, but long story short, a Volkswagen and a Porsche are on the same chassis. It's just which one do you want to drive, right? So it's like, we never really had that, but I also have like no F's given around failing. Like, a lot of people get caught up on like falling on their face, where I don't care. Like, I think if you're trying to do good work for people and you mess up, it's okay. It's easy to say, I'm sorry, I'll make it right. Or I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. Whereas I think a lot of people think they need to know it all out of the gate, and they're not allowed to mess up. I think that's a tough place to be.
And what I'm getting from you is that in this situation, what a listener might be able to do or should do is really focus on their craft and the mastery that they've built in that domain as they enter into this new vertical. And over time, they'll understand the nuances through the reps of working with this same group. But in the meantime, it's almost like the curse of knowledge. They already know a ton. They just they're not thinking about it in those terms. But that is a massive strength. What I found when we were selling to attorneys is that they didn't understand marketing at the level that we did. They didn't understand sales at the level that we did. We were experts in that domain, and that's the value that they were looking for. And so we focused on that. And over time, again, we learned the business of intake and how to apply all of our best practices specifically to their business. So I think that's a good insight.
The biggest thing is, if you're trying to do good for people, you're good. If you're trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes, that's not cool. I mean, we had that whole idea, right? If you want to make $1 million, serve $1 million. Just like, how do you serve people? How do you help? I just think that if that is a fundamental process, a thought process, mindset, everything else is easy to deal with.
Another riff on that is something that I like is, if you want to make $1 million, create $10 million worth of value.
Yeah, 10x it all day.
Right. You get 10% of the value you create, and that's you just focus on 10xing, to your point, the value, and the rest will take care of itself.
And if you think you're an imposter, journal it. Why are you journaling? Like, why do you think you're an imposter? I think you'd find quickly, if you have that feeling and you were to journal about it, it'll become pretty apparent over a month or two of journaling. I don't mean every day, just like, you're familiar with Sandler?
Yes.
Yeah, so we went to the Sandler conference many times. And there was this one thing, it was just about self-reflection. It was like the main theme of the entire conference. And the people had mentioned journals, like, I don't know, every keynote. It was just, they're such a good conference. Finally, this one lady was just like, if you're not journaling, you're losing money. I was like, all right. I looked at my business partner, Paul, and I was like, hey, we have to journal. Let's journal. And I'm not talking about like what I did today and how I felt. It's just like, no, it's like, I got frustrated. Why did I get frustrated? Or I have this pit in my stomach. What is it? What's the emotion behind it? I think a lot of people, there could be a lot of self-awareness that comes from journaling. So if imposter syndrome is there, I would recommend journaling.
Absolutely. It's about becoming conscious of the unconscious stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And I bet you it's because your mom or dad said you weren't good at something. Like, I bet you.
Which is not true. right? It's a story. Hey, it's Corey. I hope you're enjoying this episode. And I want to let you know that I have a new best-selling book that has just come out that gives you my proven system to escape founder-led sales. It's called Anyone, Not Everyone, and it's been endorsed by Aaron Ross, April Dunford, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, John Ruhlin, and many others. If you'd like to get the audiobook absolutely for free, there's a link below in the description, or you could simply go to anyonenoteveryone.com and start listening right now. At what point did you guys hire your first salesperson?
2009. 2009.
What was happening in the business that caused you to realize, hey, we need to bring someone in at this point?
Well, they were hired to produce videos, and they said, hey, I want to do sales. And we're like, all right, cool, let's do it. In 2012, we actually hired someone to come in who was like, we had all these mixed things that we started. Like, they helped build websites, and then they had to do some sales. So we had this like weird hybrid of stuff like that. And then pure sales, 2013 or 14, something like that.
And what was happening in the business that caused you to say, okay, we need to hire a dedicated salesperson?
Oh, I'd have to do it otherwise. Like, it would just end up being me forever. Like, if we don't figure out how to build a sales team that can go out and get new business, then I have a job, and I built myself a job. I can't, that's not really a business. I don't
So how did this first hire go in 2013, the full-time? Was it an immediate home run, or was there any lessons learned?
No, it was total shit show. Yeah, they sucked. They were lying to people left, right, and center. Like, we ended up firing them because they were lying. They ended up suing us for commissions for life. So we ended up settling on a number that I was upset with, but the lawyers ensured me that it would be cheaper than going to court. We had people do stupid shit, and people that sucked, and people that wouldn't pick up the phone, and we had all the things. But then you heard John C. Maxwell?
Yeah. This book's right here.
Yeah. So 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, law of the mirror.
Yes.
Things are happening inside your organization for one of two reasons. Either you model it to be okay, or you accept it to be okay. And that was kicking the nuts.
Yeah.
So I realized what I thought people were doing, which was stupid and idiotic, was actually just me letting it happen. So that was a bit of
that book has a couple of kick in the nuts moments for most people.
Oh man.
I like the law of the lid. It's a good one. So if you were going to advise an agency founder who's going to hire their first salesperson, say they're a couple years in, founder-led sales, they're ready to bring in a full-time sales role, what are some of the things that you'd recommend that they look for or do in that process?
The first thing I would do is have them come in for at least a month without talking to clients, just to see if they get you. Because if you put someone out in the market that doesn't get you, it can be quite damaging. So we have a thing here where you have to spend a month in like project coordination or content or account management before you get to go out in the market to essentially pass your real test.
Yeah. Reminds me of Zappos, right? Isn't that what they did, where they would have...
Yeah, they paid people to quit, right?
They pay people to quit, but then also make you work in like customer service and sort of work all the roles as you were kind of onboarded, so that you can really get an appreciation for what you're actually selling.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Was it Making Happiness or something like that, with a book that Tony Hsieh wrote or something? Anyway, that and pay people based on the organization's goals. That was something that it took us a long time to figure out. Like, I think salary plus commission and bonus, or commission bonus or salary commission bonus are helpful mechanisms. But I think what's important is, I don't think a lot of agency owners have clear expectations on, what's more important, new business or renewal? And as an agency, I think that's a very important decision.
I have an opinion about that, but yeah.
So what's your take on the whole thing?
Well, I think retention.
I think you cannot grow without retention as the focus. Because because 10% of 500 is 50. 10% of 100 is 10. If you bring on 20 clients a year, you'll grow until you're 200 clients with 90% retention. And 90% is high. That's really high. So retention is the name of the game. And so then your salespeople need to be compensated for bringing in good deals. So if I say to a salesperson, I'm going to give you 20% commission, Okay, great. I go land a whole bunch of deals. I want 20% commission. Well, not all deals treated equal. I think the agency owner needs to understand what's the ideal deal. And I think it's also what we say no to is almost more strategic than what we say yes to. So getting a really clear idea of like the deal you want, I think is super important.
It's around incentivizing the behaviors you want to create. Like salespeople are particularly money motivated, and if you create an incentive plan that's in alignment with creating amazing clients, then you'll get amazing clients. But if you incentivize them for any client, right, and you pay them everything up front on day one when they close the deal, that's going to create a different outcome.
Yeah, I think the analogy is like two people are camping in snowy mountains of whatever BC. One person stays in the hut while the other person goes and hunts, and then they come back running and they open the door and they're like, oh my God, oh, be careful, there's a bear. The bear gets in the cabin and they close the door and leave and say, okay, you take care of it. We can't have salespeople bringing bears into our cottages.
No, thank you. So what is a good, anything you could share on initial framework for compensating salespeople, agency sellers?
Well, I mean, I just think like, if renewal is the name of the game, which I believe it is for growth, then we want to incentivize for year two. So year one, there's, X, and year two, there's Y. And maybe you even have a nut on year two being bigger than year one. I think giving people clarity on where to sell and who to sell to is also very important. The size of the deal, the type of service that you want to be selling to that person, the type of goal that you can accomplish for that. I just think clarity is just so critical.
Beyond sales, do you hire anyone? Like, do you have to find people because you're focused on residential landscaping in that domain? Do you have to hire people with that background, or does that matter?
No, it doesn't. I mean, we're probably going to, like, we want to. We know a couple we're talking about right now. I think it helps because they're relatable. Someone who's walked in my shoes, like I trust someone who's been in my moccasins type of thing. But I don't think it's necessary. Yeah. What's your take on that one?
I think for certain, I don't think so. I think for certain roles, it's helpful. So for instance, if you have, if part of your product set is creating content, potentially, let's say in the context of attorneys, like having other attorneys or other subject matter experts writing content for your attorney clients can actually be really helpful in some respects. But in most roles, I don't think so. One exception is, we had a guy at Scorpion who was our one of our first sellers in home services. Well, he used to have a home services business before coming to Scorpion to sell. And so he would get on the phone with these guys and be like, I know exactly what it's like to be in your shoes because I was you 3 years ago, right? And so there's like, yeah, right. And then the resistance goes right to the floor. He speaks exactly their language. And he's like, let me tell you, how you should be thinking about this and the questions you need to ask and all of these things, which was really powerful for us.
Yeah, that's super cool. And that's the type of person we're talking to right now, is someone who's actually as a landscape contracting business.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I thought you were talking about a salesperson.
Yeah, and then sold it. And now he's looking to join because we know each other well.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if he hears this at some point, he'll know who it is.
That's probably not many of those types in the world today. As it relates to your product and the services and the way you package up what you sell, is it very productized or is it very bespoke every time, or is it somewhere in the middle? Like how do you approach that?
It's somewhere in the middle right now, only because we've rapidly worked on making it better over the last 4 or 5 months. We didn't realize it was going to hit so hard. So we're definitely closer to the custom right now. And we're rigorously trying to get to this product level. So we're hitting our downtime right now, and hopefully come October at Equip, we'll have something to bring to market. We've been planning it for a while, but we're more custom right now, and it's heavy, it's clunky, there's friction in the process all over the place.
How do you approach that? Going from a fully customized or heavily customized to a productized, what are some of the steps along the way that you're going through?
Well, client onboarding. So at some level, there's some sort of discovery call where it's who are you going after and what are the problems these people have and all that kind of stuff. That's no longer required because we know the problems the customer has more than they do, by far, because we're working with so many people. And there's one thing to be positioned vertically that helps acquire and new customers and stand out from the noise. But the repeatability on the operations, I think, is where the thing actually shines. Because the team knows exactly what to do. They know exactly how to do it. And we can predict within 95% of like the result we're going to generate for somebody. So we're getting to a spot now where we don't need much input from somebody to be able to come up with a solution based on the type of projects they want to get. We need to understand their flavor a little bit so we can infuse it in their content. And there's ways to do that now with, ChatGPT like than never before. But, we don't need to ask somebody what they want on a website.
Yeah.
Like, how many pages do you want? What pages are important to you?
No, stop with that nonsense.
That does not matter.
They need you to tell them this is what you need, not they don't.
And the data just doesn't lie. So,
you're the expert. It's like going to the doctor and saying, my knee hurts. I think I need this specific surgery. And,
yeah, exactly. And then they get all squeamish too when you're like asking them questions like that. Like, don't you know? Right. Don't you know?
Yeah.
Like, oh, right. Yeah, we do know.
Stop that nonsense.
But I think that's also part of the challenge of the agency owner for people listening is that you got to bring that through to everybody.
Yes.
So that when a customer is interacting with anybody on your team, they're getting that same sense of trust and confidence that they would to you. I think that's the biggest job of the agency owner. And I think something you said, I listened to one of you were being interviewed and you were saying how it's really important that whatever niche or vertical is picked, the founder's excited about it. I think that's really important piece of advice for folks. Cause like, if you're doing it just for a simple like business play, eventually you're going to peter out because it's going to be tough at some point. Like it's not going to be all, smooth sailing. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Absolutely. And when you have empathy for the buyer, you will come across much different than if you were just treating them from a transactional. It's like the transformational versus transactional relationship. Everyone's transactional, and that it's very easy to kind of have a transient client list. But if you want to really be successful, especially in the agency space, to be transformational, you have to care. Like there's no, like I've had dozens and dozens of interviews with folks just like you who have come to that same realization. They're successful. They're building an amazing business. And it's partially because they actually care about these folks. They like hanging out with them. They care about the industry. They want to see the industry grow. They're contributing their time and their efforts in many ways that a very self-focused agency just would never do. It sounds like about 50% of your business is in landscaping. What are you going to do with the other 50%? Is it just going to
raise the prices?
Ding, ding, ding. Right.
No, seriously, do one thing really, really well. Want to get the niche figured out, and then we'll focus on the next niche. I mean, we have a bunch of relationships with a bunch of clients from a long time, and we do good work. Sure. We do good work for them. Like we make them a lot of money. So I don't see them going away, but slowly but surely, the clients that aren't in our wheelhouse, they'll drop off.
Yeah.
And they'll go to a lower price provider who might not do exactly what we did, but they'll, dollar for dollar might be more value than us because we're just not positioned to crank it out for those folks. But I honestly think that, and we have been raising our prices for years with them. And we're starting to see them say, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to go find, somebody who used to work at your company who started their own thing. I'm going to go work with them.
Easy.
They're half the price.
Right.
No problem. And we're good with that. Like, hey, we had a good run. No issue here.
Rob, looking back on your time now at Intrigue Media and the person you are today, I imagine is different than let's say the 2009 Rob as relates to how you lead, how you run an organization. What are some of the differences in how you show up as a leader today that maybe was different than the early days? Yeah,
the biggest thing. So I used to get frustrated with people really quickly because they either didn't take initiative the way I thought they should, or they would ask for help when no one knew the answer and they expected someone else to figure it out. And my response was just like, well, figure it out. What do you want me to do? What am I, your mom? And I would actually show up kind of like that. Turns out not helpful, makes people feel not good. And I realized through journaling that, I lost my dad early on. So growing up, and my mom was single mom with 3 kids. So she was just trying to make ends meet. So as I was growing up as a teenager or whatever, I was just I had to figure a lot of shit out my own. And then I brought that into expecting other people to do the same. And I realized that that's not reasonable to ask of others because they haven't gone through the same types of situations. And it made me realize that when someone's asking what to do, this is an opportunity to help coach them to be able to discover the answer on their own through like a Socratic method or whatever. But it was a coaching moment, which then made me excited to help grow these people. Because like one of the things I like to do is add value. Like that's my big, I want to add value to your life. I want, if we meet 10 years from now, you're like, that Rob guy helped me get to whatever, that's kind of something that I want to put my hat on. And so that changed massively in terms of my demeanor on how I would show up to help others. But that came from journaling, self-reflection, self-awareness, and then a conscious decision to ask myself, how do I want to show up? How do I want to be remembered? Have you ever wrote your own epitaph? Yeah. That's a weird exercise. Or your own eulogy, weird exercise, but very enlightening. Yeah. So I think self-awareness led to that. So I think that's the biggest thing. Just showing up a lot more approachable.
Are there any resources that come to mind in addition to the journaling and self-awareness, like books or groups? Or
ask your team in a survey anonymously what they think about you.
Yeah, that's a good.
It hurts,
a good mirror.
And it's probably the biggest catalyst of my growth. Like to the point where I would wear a straw sombrero in our office once a month, and I called it my approachability hat, just to show people that I wasn't like a total asshole. Because they all thought I was like mean.
When you got that feedback, what did you go do? Like what resources did you tap into to start making this shift? Besides internal.
Well, the first thing I said was they're all wrong. They obviously have no idea what they're talking about. Just denial. But once you get the feedback enough from enough people, you see that there's some pretty solid consistency in what's being said. And so, John C. Maxwell's a great one. I think Sandler is amazing. Transactional analysis, Dr. Eric Byrne, which is the fundamental kind of principles of Sandler sales training. Like they call it sales training, but it's really life training. The Sandler Conference, which is held in Florida in March every year, is a huge resource. Leaders Eat Last, Simon Sinek. Start with why, Simon Sinek. But Leaders Eat Last, I think from that. But being well-read, I think is really important. We're trying to grow a business. If you're not well-read, well, you're just shooting yourself in the foot because there's just thousands of people that have done such a great job messing things up and wrote about all the lessons they made. So why not expedite some of that with being well-read? Not to mention the fact that you bring value to others by sharing stories from really good books with really good authors to help them grow their business in other ways. So I just think being well-read is really important.
Beautiful. Last two questions for you. First one is, what would be your parting advice, particularly for agency owners? Let's say the 2012 version of Rob and Paul, your co-founder, who are struggling to whatever degree that was true for you, but they're struggling with scaling at that time. Like, what advice would you have for them?
Have a shot of tequila, relax. No, seriously, people put so much pressure on themselves to be like where they aren't yet. Remember your gains, study strategy, positioning is super important. Work with you, find someone who can help you, start to put the pieces together to find a position. In 2012, we were 600,000, 590, whatever. Recognize that most businesses just fail. So as much as you haven't got where you want to go, you need to take a little bit of homage in the fact that you're still there rocking it. Yeah, master the craft.
Beautiful.
Study. Seth Godin's obviously a really great resource. Brad Sugars is really good. Instant Systems, Instant Coach, or Action Coach, Brad Sugars. Okay. But yeah, master your craft and chill the fuck. Okay. I find the harder you resist stuff, the harder the more it eludes you. The more you let go, the more things come. I know it sounds kind of foo-foo, but I think there's something to it.
Last question is, what's your motivation?
My ego says I want to be written about because I believe you can make an organization that's really profitable and also makes people the best version of themselves. So that's my ego answer. I want to help people become the best version of themselves. And for some reason, I think if we build a really successful company, people will disarm themselves when speaking to me faster. So it's almost like a key that I can turn to make it so other people will listen. I also want to live a life that's awesome. I want to make my kids struggle and not, go through what I went through, but I also want to be able to go do epic shit with really cool people. The world's big. There's a lot to go do. I want to be able to go access it, essentially.
Beautiful. Well, I don't know about the listeners, but I'm certainly inspired. Rob, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, your insight, your journey, the highs, the lows, lessons learned, all of that. That was great. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. I appreciate you doing this, man. Like, yeah, I've sent your podcast to, I don't even know, probably 4 or 5 people so far. Just since we met on the beaches of Santa Monica. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Love it. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you.
Okay, rock on. Thanks, everybody.
That's it for today. I'm Corey Quinn, and I hope you join me again next time on the Deep Specialization Podcast. If you received value from this show, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.